Nobody noticed the small cargo ship floating near the edge of Torvin space. The vessel looked old and tired, painted with the faded colors of Earth's merchant fleet. Its name was Horizon's Edge, and it carried nothing more dangerous than medical supplies and food rations, or so the Torvin believed. Commander Rylax walked through the airlock with 6 armed soldiers behind him. His gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones, and his 4 yellow eyes scanned everything with open disgust. The Torvin Empire had ruled this sector for 300 years. They had crushed rebellions, enslaved populations, and built their power on fear. Humans were new to the galaxy, soft creatures from a small blue world. They smiled too much and talked about peace like it meant something. Rylax hated them. Captain Daniel Webb stood at the entrance, hands clasped behind his back. He was average height for a human, with brown hair turning gray at the temples and calm blue eyes that seemed to notice everything. He dipped his head in greeting. "Commander, welcome aboard. We have all our documentation ready for your inspection." Rylax pushed past him without acknowledgement. His soldiers spread through the cargo bay, opening containers and scanning everything. Daniel followed at a respectful distance, answering questions when asked. The inspection dragged on for an hour. Rylax found nothing illegal, which only made him angrier. He wanted a reason to seize this ship, to remind these humans of their place in the galaxy. Then Sophie walked in. She was young, maybe 22 years old, with short red hair and grease stains on her uniform. She carried a heavy toolkit and moved quickly across the bay, focused on her work. She was the ship's junior engineer, and she had a broken water recycler to fix. Sophie didn't see the Torvin officer step into her path. She collided with him hard, her toolkit clattering to the floor. Metal pieces scattered everywhere. "I'm so sorry," she said, dropping to her knees to gather her tools. "I didn't see you. Are you okay?" The officer looked at Rylax. Something passed between them. A decision. Rylax moved forward with frightening speed. His armored hand swung down and caught Sophie across the face. The crack echoed through the cargo bay. She flew sideways and hit the deck, blood streaming from a cut on her cheek. "You dare touch a Torvin officer?" Rylax shouted. "You worthless creature. On your knees and beg forgiveness." Sophie pushed herself up on shaking arms. Her blood dripped onto the metal floor. She was crying, more from shock than pain. The cargo bay went silent, not the nervous silence of fear. Something else. Something the Torvin had never encountered before. It was the silence of a pack recognizing a threat. The silence before violence. Daniel Webb walked toward Sophie. His footsteps were the only sound. He knelt beside her and gently tilted her face to examine the wound. His movements were careful, almost tender. He pulled a cloth from his pocket and pressed it against her bleeding cheek. "You're okay," he said softly. "Just breathe." Then he stood and turned to face Rylax. The commander expected submission. Every species submitted to the Torvin eventually. It was the natural order. The strong dominated the weak. But Daniel's face showed nothing like submission. His expression had changed completely. The diplomatic smile was gone. What remained was something ancient. Something that had kept humanity alive through ice ages and wars, and every horror they had inflicted upon themselves. Rylax noticed movement around him. The human crew members were shifting positions. Not running, not cowering. They were blocking exits, cutting off his soldiers, surrounding them without seeming to surround them. When did that happen? His tactical officer sent a warning through their private channel. "Commander, we are being encircled." Rylax looked around properly for the first time. 15 humans. Only 15. Against 7 armed Torvin soldiers. The numbers favored him completely. Why did his instincts scream danger? Daniel helped Sophie to her feet and passed her to another crew member who led her away. Then he stepped closer to Rylax, close enough to see the golden flecks in the human's blue eyes. "Commander," Daniel said quietly, "do you know what you just did?" Rylax raised his chin. "I disciplined a careless servant, as is my right." "No." Daniel's voice carried no anger. "That made it worse. You struck one of my crew, a young woman who made an honest mistake. You drew her blood on my ship. And—" Daniel tilted his head slightly, like a predator examining prey. "And now you have a problem." Rylax laughed. It sounded hollow even to him. "You threaten me? You are nothing. Your species is nothing. We conquered empires while you were living in caves." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "And while you were conquering empires, we were learning something you never had to learn. What is that? Daniel's smile returned. But it was not the friendly smile from before. This smile belonged to something older. Something that had survived extinction events through sheer stubborn refusal to die. We learned what happens when you hurt someone's family. The cargo bay lights seemed to dim. The human crew members stood motionless, watching, waiting. Rylax felt something he had not felt in decades of military command, that he felt afraid. Commander, his tactical officer whispered urgently. I suggest we return to our ship. Rylax wanted to agree. Every instinct demanded retreat, but his pride would not allow it. This is coalition space, he said. You cannot touch us. Daniel's smile widened. Commander, you're standing on a human-registered vessel in human-designated territory. Coalition law doesn't reach here. He gestured at Sophie's blood still wet on the floor. And you just gave us a reason to remember that. 3 drops of blood fell from Sophie's chin before anyone moved again. The sound they made hitting the metal floor was impossibly loud in the quiet cargo bay. Rylax watched Daniel Webb's crew continue their slow repositioning. They moved like water flowing around stones. Natural, unhurried, deadly efficient. His soldiers were now completely surrounded, though no human had made an aggressive move. This is absurd, Rylax said. You are cargo haulers. We are trained warriors. Daniel nodded slowly. You're right. We haul cargo. That's our job now. He emphasized the last word strangely. Tell me, Commander, what do you know about human history? I know your species is young, primitive. You only discovered space travel 2 centuries ago. All true. Daniel began walking in a slow circle around Rylax. The Torvan commander turned to keep him in sight. But did you ever wonder what we did before that? Rylax said nothing. We fought, Daniel continued. Each other mostly. For thousands of years. Over land. Over resources. Over ideas. Over nothing at all. He stopped walking and faced Rylax directly. We got very good at it. Ancient history is meaningless. Your primitive weapons cannot match Torvan technology. Maybe not. Daniel gestured at his crew. But look at them, Commander. Really look. Rylax studied the humans more carefully. They stood in relaxed postures, but something was wrong. Their eyes. Every single human was watching him and his soldiers with the same flat, patient stare. No fear. No excitement. Just calm observation, like predators watching prey decide whether to run. Do you see it now? Daniel asked. These are not soldiers. They're merchants, engineers, pilots. The cook over there is 60 years old. The woman by the door has 2 children waiting for her on Earth. He stepped closer to Rylax. And every single one of them is ready to kill you right now. Not because they're trained for it. Not because they want to. But because you hurt Sophie. Rylax's hand moved toward his weapon. Instantly, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The humans didn't reach for weapons. They didn't shout threats. They simply focused on him with increased intensity. I wouldn't, Daniel said quietly. You might kill 1 or 2 of us. But you won't leave this ship alive. That's not a threat, Commander. It's mathematics. The Torvan tactical officer spoke through the private channel again. Commander, I am detecting elevated heart rates and adrenaline in all human crew members. But their behavior patterns do not match fear responses. They match hunting patterns. Hunting patterns. Rylax had conquered 12 worlds. He had faced rebellions, assassinations, and war. Nothing had prepared him for this. The humans were not acting like victims or even like enemies. They were acting like a pack that had cornered dangerous prey, and they had decided he was the prey. What do you want? Rylax asked. His voice remained steady, but he could taste the bitter edge of fear in his mouth. First, I want you to understand something. Daniel's voice stayed calm and quiet. In human culture, we have a concept that doesn't translate well into galactic common. We call it family. I know this word. It means genetic relations. That's the biological definition. But for humans, family is bigger than blood. Daniel gestured at his crew again. These people are my family. I've worked with some of them for 15 years. I've shared meals with them, celebrated their children's births, mourned their losses. Sophie has been on this ship for 8 months, but she became family the moment she joined us. Rylax struggled to understand. You are saying these workers matter to you personally? I'm saying that when you hit Sophie, you didn't just assault a junior crew member. You attacked my family in front of me. Daniel's eyes hardened. On my world, throughout our entire history, that has only ever ended one way. You cannot threaten a Torvan commander. The The consequences would be severe. I'm not threatening you. Daniel sounded almost sad. I'm explaining why the next few minutes will determine whether you live or die. And I'm giving you a chance that, honestly, you don't deserve. Rylax's soldiers shifted nervously. They were elite warriors, veterans of multiple campaigns. But they had never seen humans like this. The species was supposed to be friendly, cooperative, easy to intimidate. These humans looked nothing like the reports described. Your battle cruiser will destroy this ship, Rylax said. Probably. Daniel shrugged. But you'll be dead. Your soldiers will be dead. And the next human ship they attack will be ready for them. He paused. We have a very long memory, Commander. We hold grudges for generations. Is that really the legacy you want to leave? The cargo bay remained frozen in that terrible silence. Rylax calculated odds, considered options, and found none of them acceptable. Fighting meant death. Retreating meant humiliation. Calling for backup would only delay the confrontation. What would satisfy you? Rylax finally asked. Daniel smiled. But it was not a warm expression. We'll discuss that on the bridge. Just you and me. He looked at the Torvin soldiers. Your men will remain here as our guests. They'll be treated well, as long as they don't try anything foolish. You're taking me hostage. I'm inviting you to negotiate. There's a difference. Daniel started walking toward the cargo bay exit. Come, Commander. Let me show you why the galaxy should have paid more attention to human history. Rylax hesitated for only a moment. Then he followed. Because despite his pride, despite his rank, despite everything he had been taught about Torvin superiority, some ancient instinct told him the truth. The human was in control now. And the only way to survive was to listen. Behind them, the cargo bay remained silent. The humans watched the Torvin soldiers with patient, unblinking eyes. Waiting. Ready. The game had changed, and everyone knew it. The bridge of Horizon's Edge was small and cluttered with personal items. Pictures of families hung near control stations. A child's drawing was taped to the navigation console. A small plant grew in a pot by the viewport. Rylax found it all deeply unsettling. Military vessels should be clean, efficient, and personal. This ship felt like someone's home. Daniel sealed the door behind them and walked to the main display screen. He began typing commands without looking at Rylax. Do you know why the Coalition accepted humanity so quickly? Daniel asked. Because you begged for membership. You needed protection. That's the official story. Daniel pulled up a file and projected it onto the screen. Here's the real one. The image showed Earth from space. Blue and green and white, spinning slowly in the darkness. First contact happened 40 years before we officially joined the Coalition. A Torvin scout ship found us. They planned to do what your empire always does. Intimidate, threaten, demand submission. Rylax remembered the mission. It had been classified, but he knew the basic facts. The scout ship never returned. What happened to that ship was never explained to me, Rylax admitted. They tried to demonstrate Torvin superiority by destroying one of our cities from orbit. Daniel's voice remained flat. They picked a small coastal city. Population of about 200,000. They gave no warning. The screen changed to show a massive crater where a city had once been. They killed everyone. Mothers, children, old people. Daniel paused. We had never seen aliens before. We didn't know the galaxy existed. And our introduction was the murder of 200,000 innocent people. Rylax felt uncomfortable. He had participated in orbital bombardments before. It was standard Torvin strategy. Break the enemies will quickly to reduce overall casualties. What happened next? He asked. Daniel smiled grimly. We got angry. The screen filled with images that made Rylax's breath catch. Human ships. Thousands of them. Rising from Earth's surface in waves. They were crude vessels, built with primitive technology. They should not have been a threat to a Torvin scout ship. We tracked your scout ship for 3 days. They tried to run, but we had numbers. We surrounded them with ships we built in weeks. Ships held together with desperation and rage. You destroyed a Torvin military vessel with primitive rockets. We rammed them. Daniel's voice held no pride, only grim satisfaction. 17 ships. We threw 17 ships into their hull until it cracked open. The pilots knew they would die. They volunteered anyway. They considered it an honor. Rylax stared at the screen in disbelief. That is insane. Yes, Daniel agreed. That's exactly what the Coalition Council said when they reviewed the incident. They called us insane, dangerous, unpredictable. He turned to face Rylax directly. They were terrified of us. The Coalition does not fear primitive species. They fear species that will sacrifice everything for revenge. They fear species that cannot be intimidated. They fear species that would rather die fighting than submit. Daniel stepped closer. And most of all, they fear what we did next. The screen changed again. This time it showed human ships spreading across space. Not in decades, in years. After we destroyed your scout ship, we built more. Better. Faster. Within 5 years, we had a fleet that could challenge any single coalition member. Within 10 years, we could have challenged all of them combined. Impossible. You had no space infrastructure. We built it. While sleeping 4 hours a night. While working ourselves to death. While pouring every resource we had into one single goal. Daniel's eyes burned with intensity. We were never going to let anyone hurt us like that again. Never. Rylax understood war. He understood conquest. But this was something different. This was rage transformed into industry. Grief transformed into purpose. A species weaponizing its own trauma. The Coalition didn't invite us to join, Daniel continued. They begged us. Because the alternative was fighting a species that had just demonstrated it would burn itself to ashes rather than submit. The screen went dark. That's who you struck today, Commander. Not a weak, friendly species that needs protection. A species that chose to be friendly because the alternative was war without end. Rylax's mouth felt dry. This changes nothing. You are still bound by Coalition law. We follow Coalition law because we choose to. Because peace is better than war. Because we want to believe the galaxy can be more than just the strong crushing the weak. Daniel walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. But make no mistake, the moment that choice becomes survival, we will remind everyone why they feared us. An alert chimed on the console. Daniel checked the display and laughed softly. Perfect timing. What is it? Your battlecruiser. The Wrath of Torva. They've detected our situation and are moving to intervene. Daniel turned back to Rylax with that terrible smile. They're going to demand your release. Probably threaten to destroy my ship. Then this is over. You cannot fight a battlecruiser. Daniel's smile widened. Commander, I don't have to fight it alone. He opened a communication channel and spoke calmly. All human vessels in Sector 7. This is Captain Daniel Webb of the Horizon's Edge. We have a situation. Code family. Static crackled. Then voices began responding. One after another. Ship after ship. We copy, Horizon's Edge. On our way. Understood. Engines at maximum. Tell them we're coming. 17 signals appeared on the navigation display. All heading toward their position. Rylax watched in stunned silence as a fleet assembled from nothing. How, he whispered. Every human ship is a warship, Commander. We just hide it better than most. Daniel patted his console affectionately. Now, let's see how your Admiral handles a fair fight. Admiral Severus watched the situation unfold from her command chair aboard the Wrath of Torva. Her 4 eyes narrowed as more human ships appeared on her tactical display. What are those vessels? She demanded. Her tactical officer checked and rechecked his readings. Cargo ships, Admiral. Civilian freighters. They should pose no threat. Then why are they forming a combat pattern? The officer had no answer. Severus studied the formation carefully. She had commanded warships for 40 years. She knew battle strategies from 100 different species. What the humans were doing made no tactical sense. They were positioning themselves between her battlecruiser and the Horizon's Edge. Not in defensive lines. Not in attack formation. They were spreading out in a loose sphere, surrounding her ship as much as protecting Daniel's. They're creating a kill box, she realized. If we fire on any of them, the rest will close in. Admiral, those are civilian ships. They cannot possibly threaten us. Open a channel to the human vessel. The communication screen flickered and Daniel Webb's face appeared. He looked calm, almost relaxed. Behind him, Rylax stood stiffly, very much aware that he was no longer in control. Admiral Severus, Daniel said politely. Thank you for responding so quickly. I assume you want to discuss Commander Rylax. Release him immediately, or I will destroy your ship. That's certainly one option. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. But before you commit to that course of action, I'd like to share some information. I am not interested in negotiations. Then consider it a tactical briefing. Daniel tapped his console and transmitted a data package. Please have your officers review this. Severus gestured impatiently. Her tactical officer opened the file and immediately stiffened. Admiral, you need to see this. The display showed specifications for the human ships surrounding them. Hidden weapon systems. Military-grade shields concealed beneath cargo plating. Engine outputs that exceeded anything in Coalition civilian records. These are not cargo ships, the tactical officer whispered. They were cargo ships, Daniel corrected through the channel. Last week, humans are very good at adaptation. It's how we survived on Earth. Severus leaned forward. You have hidden an illegal military fleet in civilian shipping. We've maintained our right to self-defense in a hostile galaxy. Coalition law allows member species to protect their vessels from piracy. I am not a pirate. Commander Rylax boarded my ship, assaulted a member of my crew, and drew blood. Under human law, that's an attack. Under many Coalition precedents, my response was remarkably restrained. Severus considered her options. She commanded the most powerful warship in this sector. One battlecruiser against 17 converted freighters should be no contest. But something in Daniel's voice made her hesitate. Admiral, her tactical officer said quietly, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the human ships. They're charging weapons, but the configuration is unlike anything in our database. What kind of weapons? Unknown. The power readings suggest they're meant for close-range combat. Very close range. Severus understood immediately. They're planning to ram us. Daniel heard the comment and nodded. You're familiar with our history, then? Yes, Admiral, that's our backup plan. If you destroy my ship, those 17 vessels will accelerate directly into your hull. Some won't make it. Most will. And at those speeds, with those energy signatures, even your shields won't save you. You would sacrifice your own people. Every pilot in that fleet volunteered the moment they heard code family. They know what it means. They know the stakes. Daniel's voice hardened. And they know that if we back down now, every human in the galaxy becomes a target. Severus pulled up intelligence files on humanity. She had read them before, but she read them again now with new understanding. The wars they had fought among themselves. The weapons they had invented. The way they kept finding new methods to kill each other even as their technology advanced. One phrase caught her attention. Mutually assured destruction. A human military doctrine from their pre-space era. Both sides had weapons powerful enough to destroy each other completely. Neither side used them because the result would be total annihilation. Humans had lived with that reality for generations. They had built their entire civilization on the edge of extinction. They were comfortable with it in ways no other species could understand. Admiral, Daniel said, breaking into her thoughts. Let me ask you a direct question. Is Commander Rylax worth starting a war you cannot win? One battlecruiser against 17 freighters. The mathematics favor me. You'll destroy my fleet. Probably. But we'll destroy you. Definitely. Daniel's smile faded completely. And then Earth will build another fleet. A real fleet. And they'll remember this day forever. They'll teach it to their children. They'll make sure every human in the galaxy knows that the Torvin killed their people for the crime of protecting a wounded crew member. He leaned closer to the screen. How long do you think it will take before someone decides to balance that equation? 10 years? 20? 100? He shook his head slowly. Humans don't forget, Admiral. We carry our grudges across generations. The scars of wars fought thousands of years ago still influence our politics today. Severus saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't negotiating. He was simply explaining reality. The humans had already accepted that they might die today. They had made their peace with it. Now they were waiting to see if she had the wisdom to choose a different path. What do you want? She asked finally. Justice. A formal apology from Commander Rylax. Reparations for Sophie. And a meeting with Coalition representatives to establish clear rules about how member species treat each other. That is a significant demand. Sophie's face will carry a scar for the rest of her life. My crew was forced to choose between submission and war. Daniel's voice softened slightly. I think we're being remarkably reasonable, all things considered. Severus looked at the tactical display. 17 ships waiting patiently, ready to die if necessary. She made her decision. Stand down your weapons. I will arrange the meeting you requested. Daniel Webb exhaled slowly. For the first time, he looked tired. Thank you, Admiral. I was hoping you'd be smart enough to see the bigger picture. I am smart enough to recognize an unwinnable situation. Severus stood from her command chair. But this is not over, Captain Webb. The Torvan Empire does not forget either. Daniel nodded respectfully. Then we understand each other perfectly. The Coalition Council chamber had never felt so tense. Representatives from 30 species filled the curved rows of seats, their attention fixed on the center platform where humans and Torvans stood facing each other. Sophie sat in the gallery with a bandage still visible on her cheek. She had wanted to stay on the ship, but Daniel insisted she come. She needed to see what her injury had started. Ambassador Croth of the Torvan Empire spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber with practiced authority. This incident represents a dangerous overreaction by the human delegation. Commander Rylax acted within standard inspection protocols. The human response was disproportionate and threatening. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Several species nodded in agreement. The Torvan had powerful allies. Daniel remained silent, letting the ambassador finish. We demand a formal apology from the human government, compensation for the detention of our military personnel, and assurances that this behavior will not be repeated. The council moderator, an ancient being from a species so old they had forgotten their own homeworld, turned to Daniel. Captain Webb, you may respond. Daniel walked to the center platform. He wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. He looked unremarkable in every way. Just an ordinary man in an extraordinary situation. I'd like to begin by sharing something with the council. Not an argument, just information. He activated the display system. This is the classified Coalition intelligence file on humanity. Most of you have never seen it. I obtained a copy through channels I won't disclose. The file appeared on every screen in the chamber. Council members leaned forward to read. Pay attention to page 3, Daniel said. The section titled Assessment of Threat Level. Ambassador Croth's expression flickered. He knew what was in that file. The document described humanity in terms that made several delegates gasp. Words like unpredictable and potentially unstable appeared frequently. But one paragraph stood out above all others. Daniel read it aloud. The human species represents a unique challenge to coalition stability. Their capacity for both cooperation and violence exceeds measurable parameters. Unlike most species, humans do not require logical reasons to fight. They will sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like honor, justice, and loyalty. This makes them impossible to reliably predict or control. He paused to let the words sink in. The coalition didn't accept humanity because we asked nicely. They accepted us because the alternative was worse. They looked at our history, our wars, our weapons, and they decided it was safer to have us inside the coalition than outside it. This is irrelevant to the current situation, Ambassador Croth interrupted. Is it? Daniel smiled thinly. Because I think it explains everything. You see, the Torvan have spent centuries building an empire through intimidation. They threaten, they bully, they break spirits until resistance seems pointless. It works on most species. He gestured at Sophie in the gallery. But when Commander Rylax struck a young human woman, he made a fundamental mistake. He assumed humans would respond like everyone else. That we would calculate the odds, recognize our weakness, and submit. The chamber was completely silent now. We don't work that way. We never have. When someone hurts our family, something very old wakes up inside us. Something that doesn't care about odds or consequences. Something that only understands one truth. Protect your own, no matter the cost. A delegate from a smaller species raised a tentacle. Captain Webb, are you saying humans are inherently violent? No, I'm saying we're inherently protective. Daniel's voice softened. Humans are the species that runs toward danger, not away from it. When there's a fire, we run into the building to save strangers. When someone's drowning, we jump into the water even if we can barely swim ourselves. He looked directly at Sophie. And when someone hurts one of our own, we don't ask whether fighting back is practical. We ask what kind of people we would be if we didn't. Sophie felt tears forming in her eyes. She hadn't understood until now what her injury had meant to her crew. She thought they were protecting her. They were protecting themselves. Their identity. Their idea of what humanity should be. The Torvan demand apologies and compensation. Daniel continued, turning back to the council. We demand something different. We demand that this council establish a clear rule. No member of any species may strike another without consequence. Not inspectors, not commanders, not ambassadors. Everyone is protected, or no one is. Ambassador Croft laughed harshly. You want to change coalition law because one of your workers got a bruise. I want to change coalition law because it's wrong. Daniel's voice hardened. How many species in this chamber have suffered Torvin discipline? How many of you have watched your people humiliated and beaten while coalition rules did nothing to help? He looked around the chamber. Nobody spoke, but Daniel could see it in their eyes. The smaller species, the weaker ones, the races that had learned to bow their heads and accept whatever treatment the powerful decided to give them. You've been waiting for someone to stand up. Someone strong enough to say that power doesn't equal right. Daniel spread his hands. Well, here we are. Humanity is standing up, and we're asking you to stand with us. The moderator raised an appendage. This matter requires deliberation. We will recess for 2 hours and reconvene for voting. Daniel nodded and stepped back from the platform. As delegates filed out, Sophie made her way down to where Daniel stood. He looked exhausted but determined. Captain, she said quietly, I never wanted this to become so big. Daniel put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sophie, what happened to you could happen to anyone. Any species. Any crew member just trying to do their job. He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. We're not doing this for you. We're doing this for everyone who ever got hurt by someone bigger and was told to just accept it. Sophie nodded slowly. She understood now. This wasn't about one incident. It was about what kind of galaxy they wanted to live in, and humanity had chosen their side. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 22 species in favor, 8 against. The new rule passed, and the galaxy changed forever. Commander Rylax stood before the assembled council, his posture stiff with humiliation. He had been ordered by Admiral Severus herself to deliver the apology. Refusing would mean the end of his career. I acknowledge, he said through clenched teeth, that my actions aboard the human vessel were inappropriate. I offer formal apology to the injured party and accept responsibility for my conduct. The words sounded hollow. Everyone knew he didn't mean them, but that wasn't the point. Sophie stepped forward to accept the apology. She had insisted on this, despite Daniel's offer to handle it himself. She wanted to look Rylax in the eyes. I accept your apology, Commander. Her voice was steady and clear. And I hope you'll remember this moment the next time you consider striking someone who can't fight back. Rylax's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He turned and marched from the chamber, his remaining dignity in tatters. The council session ended with handshakes and quiet conversations. Several species approached the human delegation to express gratitude. A young representative from a species called the Ven, small beings with delicate wings, stopped Sophie before she could leave. Thank you, the Ven whispered. My people have suffered Torvin inspections for generations. We never had the strength to resist. Sophie felt uncomfortable with the praise. I didn't do anything. I just got hit. You got hit, and your people chose to fight rather than look away. The Ven blinked large silver eyes. That matters more than you know. The journey back to Horizon's Edge took 3 days. Sophie spent most of it thinking about what the Ven had said. By the time they docked with their ship, she had come to understand something important. The crew greeted her like a returning hero. They had followed the council proceedings through news broadcasts. They knew what had happened. Helen, the ship's cook, hugged her tightly. You did good, kid. I didn't do anything, Sophie repeated. You stood in front of the whole galaxy and showed them what we fight for. Helen stepped back and wiped her eyes. That's not nothing. The days that followed brought unexpected changes. Other species began requesting escort from human cargo ships. Word had spread about Code Family, about the fleet that appeared from nowhere, about the humans who would rather die together than let one of their own be hurt. Daniel received a message from Coalition Command offering him a position in the diplomatic corps. He declined politely. His place was on his ship, with his crew, but the offers kept coming. To other captains, to other human vessels. The galaxy wanted human protection. One evening, Sophie found Daniel sitting alone in the cargo bay. He was staring at the spot where her blood had stained the floor. The maintenance team had cleaned it, but he could still see it in his mind. Captain, she said quietly, are you okay? Daniel looked up and smiled wearily. Just thinking. About what? About what comes next. He gestured for her to sit beside him. We drew a line, Sophie. We told the galaxy that humans protect their own. Now we have to live up to that promise. Is that bad? It's responsibility. Daniel leaned back against a cargo container. Other species are going to look at us differently now. They'll expect us to be the ones who stand up when nobody else will. That's a heavy weight to carry. Sophie considered this. Maybe we're built for it. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Humans have always protected each other. Through famines and plagues and wars. We survive because we stuck together. She touched the fading scar on her cheek. Maybe that's our purpose in the galaxy. Not to conquer or dominate. Just to protect. Daniel studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed softly. You know, for a junior engineer, you're pretty wise. I had a good teacher. Sophie stood and offered her hand to help him up. Come on, Captain. The convoy is forming up. 23 ships from 9 different species, all wanting to travel under human escort. Daniel took her hand and rose to his feet. 23 ships. So far. More are requesting to join every hour. They walked together toward the bridge. Through the viewport, Sophie could see the gathering fleet. Ships of all sizes and designs, representing species from across the coalition. They had come seeking safety under human protection, because humans protected their own, and apparently, the galaxy had decided that being part of a human convoy made them part of the family. Sophie took her station and began running system checks. The bridge hummed with activity as the crew prepared for departure. Daniel settled into his captain's chair and opened a channel to the convoy. This is Captain Webb of the Horizon's Edge. We'll be departing in 30 minutes. Stay close, follow our heading, and don't worry about anything else. He paused and smiled. You're with us now, and we take care of our people. The responses came flooding in. Gratitude, relief, trust. Sophie watched the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Torvin were planning their revenge. Other threats would emerge. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of species that saw kindness as weakness, but humans had faced worse. They had survived ice ages and wars and their own worst impulses. They had learned that the only way to endure was to stand together. Now they would teach that lesson to the stars. Sophie touched her scar one last time. It would fade eventually, becoming just another line on her face. But she would never forget what it represented. The day humanity reminded the galaxy what family meant. The day everything changed. And the day a junior engineer learned that sometimes the smallest people start the biggest revolutions. The convoy began to move, 24 ships flying as one. At the center, the Horizon's Edge led them forward into the unknown. Humans at the front, family behind them, and a galaxy watching to see what would happen next.